The Sam Sorbo Show is brought to you in partnership by the Herzog Foundation.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the show. Today, I'm very excited to introduce you to my guest for the day. She's a trailblazer in education. She's a champion for families and a powerful voice in the fight to bring real values back into our kids' learning. As the CEO of PragerU and the visionary behind PragerU Kids, she's providing homeschooling families and really all parents with the tools they need to teach truth, character, and critical thinking. So stick around because you won't want to miss my conversation with Marissa Streit, the CEO of Prager University. We'll be right back.
Sam Sorbo,
Sam, welcome back to the program.
I'm glad we welcome Sam Sorbo.
It's great to have you here.
Welcome back to the Sam Sorbo Show. Marissa Streit is the CEO of PragerU, which is a digital media platform dedicated to educating audiences on conservative values. Under her leadership, PragerU has expanded its reach with engaging content on politics, culture, and history. You've all seen the videos, as well as launching PragerU Kids, which is a program that's aimed at teaching young people important values and principles, something that is sorely lacking in our schools today. Marissa is committed to empowering individuals with the knowledge to think critically and engage in meaningful conversations, which I'm hoping to have today. She's a passionate advocate for free speech and the transformative power of education. Welcome to the program.
It is my pleasure to be here with you, Sam. People ask me all the time, what is something I've changed my mind on? And you have been one of those who've changed my mind on something very important. So I look forward to sharing that with you for the first time and your audience.
You honor me by saying that, so thank you very much. Let's talk just briefly about your background, because you stepped into a pivotal role here. And people didn't even know, you kind of came out of the blue. So where did you come from that you stepped into this role?
So actually, PragerU started in my kitchen. So I'm a founding member of PragerU. It wasn't my idea. It was actually Alan Estrin's idea, along with Dennis Prager, to create a digital platform that helps cure America from its bad education system. And it sounds like a huge, noble goal, but what they've realized a long time ago was that America needed penicillin for the mind. And good values and important ideas and truth are the way to cure America. And so they approached me with this concept of PragerU 13 years ago and handed me a laptop and said, go for it. And so that's how I got involved with PragerU. Before PragerU, I was in what I guess you would call the traditionally known education. I taught K through 8th grade in California. I actually ran a school. I was headmistress of a school. I went to what I call a teacher seminary, which means I've been indoctrinated through a teacher college and somehow found a way to do the most fun thing in the world, which is change my mind and free myself. And a big part of it was through this process of building PragerU and learning and learning and learning more and just gobbling more knowledge about what has been done to us as educators, parents, and students in America.
So I've heard that PragerU, the philosophy is our problems started in education, or the schools, let's say.
Yes.
And so the solution has to be found in education. We need better education.
Yes.
Right? And so that's what you set out to do. And I remember when the first PragerU 5-minute videos hit, they were so transformative. Like they moved the needle, and they continue to do so. So whose idea was the 5-minute videos? Was that your brainchild there?
No. So Alan Estrin, who's the producer of the Dennis Prager radio show, and Dennis's best friend for years, he was the one who came up with this idea that the internet can be that slingshot. Right? It's a David versus Goliath type of problem, where how do you fight against this behemoth of an education institution that has just been gobbling so much of us for so many years? And Alan said, well, if there's anything that can be done, it's technology. And so this concept of 5-minute video and social media and being able to go directly to the consumer and say, you might want to hear about something differently. That was his idea. The rest of the operation of what and when and how and how to grow that came after I was hired. The original concept was Alan Estrin's concept.
Right. And so tell me about PragerU Kids.
So after running PragerU for about 10 years, we were mostly focused on high school and up. We made these 5-minute videos that many of them have gone viral. Some of them reached 55 million views, and we were really known for what we call here PragerU's bread and butter, were the 5-minute videos. And we have this massive audience. At that point, maybe we were at 8 million collective followers, and they kept emailing us all the time. When are you going to make something for my kids? I love watching the 5-minute videos, but I have a child who is going to what I call a government school, or we've had a lot of homeschoolers and private school kids who said, we wish we could show these videos to our kids, but the 5-minute videos don't quite, they're not relatable to little ones.
Well, they assume a certain level of
knowledge.
Knowledge, yeah.
Yes. So I thought that the right thing to do as a CEO was to never allow mission creep. And because that's what I learned when I got my MBA, is like you stick to what you do. And so that's what I had done for the first 10 years. And when the lockdowns happened, I just felt this incredible pull to just figure it out. I walked in after saying no so many times. I remember walking in, my chief of staff was in the office, and I said to her, you know how I've been saying all this time that we're never going to make PragerU Kids content? I think we need to make PragerU Kids content. We're just going to have to figure out how to do it.
And that was your aversion to mission creep. You're educating adults, but what you figured out was
the kids needed us.
the kids need you. Yeah, exactly.
And the parents needed
right,
us.
for the kids.
And I kept having these memories of when I was an educator in a school myself, of telling parents, don't worry about educating your child. We'll take care of them. Just make sure that you feed them. Make sure that you bathe them. Make sure that they have a really good night's sleep.
You're like a reformed tobacco smoker, right? You're like a huge anti-smoking person
right.
now.
I'm all in now, because you know what, Sam? I saw it and I was part of it. It's not that I feel necessarily guilty, but I'm just so aware of it. I'm so aware of it. Like, you put me in front of a head of a school and I'm like their biggest nightmare, because I used to sit in their seat, right? And so I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, we told parents not to worry about their kids' education or their character or their values. I remember we would tell them, don't even worry about doing homework at home because it's too much for you. Too much for you? Are you kidding me? These are lawyers and doctors and brilliant people with incredibly interesting backgrounds, and we're telling these parents they can't teach their kids anything, but a 20-year-old who just came out of teacher seminary college knows better than them.
This is like literally my language.
I'm like, what? How could I have done that? But that's what we were taught.
Yeah, you were
at
trained.
Teacher college.
Yeah.
To say to the parents, well, you're no expert because you didn't study Pablo Freire's pedagogy of the oppressed, right? Or any of the other nonsense DEI stuff that we were taught in teacher colleges. So eventually, you fast forward all these years and the lockdowns happen, and all the parents are saying, come on, we want to do more, we want to do more. And who am I to say to the parents, no, you don't need to do more? I won't say that anymore. And so I said, okay, we will figure it out. And so we started with the smallest little nugget. And that's really the entrepreneur in me, who recognizes to not get overwhelmed when the task is so big. I use this analogy. You don't want to look at the top of the mountain when you're building something. You kind of want to just take one step at a time and keep climbing and climbing.
Right. You don't look at college when your child is going for kindergarten and you're just trying to teach them to read. You're not going to start with the Iliad. And it's true. And so you had the similar approach.
You just have to trust that if you just do the right thing and you take the right steps, the road is going to open up. And so that's what I decided to do during the lockdowns. I just said, you know what, the parents are asking, I'm just going to show up. And so we started making these kids' books, Otto's Tales. And you spent some time here at PragerU, and so I'm a little crazy, and the team just accepts me, thankfully, the way I am, the way God made me. And I walked up to my chief of staff and Jill Simonian, and I basically said, well, Jill Simonian wasn't hired yet, but I contacted her on Facebook, and I said, I see something in you. Come in. I need to talk to you. Right. And I just said, you know what? We're just going to figure it out. We've never done this before. But we are going to write a kids book, and we're going to make a kids show, and we're going to make it so easy for the parents to realize how fantastic they are at teaching their kids values and literacy. And it's just gonna arm them. It's just gonna arm them with what they've been robbed of, which is the confidence that they can do what they're meant to do. And that's how PragerU Kids started.
Yeah. So that's how. So, do you do anything specific to support homeschool families, or is it basically just across the board?
There is no education without parents. I can't say this enough, and it doesn't matter where you send your kids. If you homeschool them, you send them to government school if you have to, or if you send them to a charter school or parochial school or a private school, every piece of content PragerU makes for any educator, whether it's a parent or a teacher, looks exactly the same. And that's part of my idea that I think all of us, but especially parents, can do an even better job than a hired educator. So I'll give you an example. If you'll go on Scholastic or BrainPop, which produces supplementary material, and some homeschoolers use that as well, you will oftentimes see one area for the parent and one area for the educator or the teacher. From my perspective, the parent is the educator too. Why do you have two different portions of your website targeting basically the same consumer? It should be the same consumer. The parent should be looking at the exact same material as the teacher. There's no reason why it isn't the case. Right? If you think about it, it makes no sense. Oh, well, the teacher needs the lesson plan. No, they don't.
And the parent doesn't.
Right. No, they don't need anything any different. There's no reason to, keep those two things separate. So when
Why do they do that then?
Why do you think they do that? Well, if you actually get access to it, you'll see that there is so much politics in the stuff that's given to the educator that you would be shocked. But you see, the educator has already been groomed to think that they're doing the right thing. They're not bad, but they've been groomed through the teacher seminaries to think that if they teach Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth, they're a better person and therefore they actually care about the earth. Where the parent is more likely to say, hey, wait a second, that sounds really political to me.
Yeah, I haven't really bought into that anyway, so maybe
why
are we
or you
doing
would
that?
say, why is that? I'm not sending my kid to school to learn that. That's not what I want my kid to learn. Right? And so there is such an agenda behind the institutions that have trained, credentialed our teachers, where if the parents just saw that, they would be repulsed. And by the way, that is what happened during the lockdowns, right? The unintended consequence of the lockdown
they saw stuff.
Is that the parents started seeing those political things and saying, wait a second, I never noticed that you put that in front of my child. I never noticed that you were grooming my child. But that has been basically the vision here at PragerU, is to teach parents that there should never be something that is made for your child that is given through a stranger, effectively, or an expert, that is not given to you directly. So every single piece of content we make is for homeschool families, because schooling always starts at home. Even if you send your child to a government school because you have to and you can't make the better choice of homeschooling or the ideal choice of homeschooling, you should always still school at home in the afternoons, on the weekends, through your scaffolding, through your behavior, through your conversations with your child. That's when you really want to build their character and inoculate them.
So, really great point about building character, which we've sort of abdicated in our culture now. We're letting the schools build character because the schools said, don't worry about the education of your child, right? And you said it, right? And so parents said, oh, okay, so I've delegated that responsibility, and it's not true, because children need character building and they need their parents. And before we even started this conversation, you came in and said roughly 20% of children had a severe depressive episode in the past year.
Yes.
That's 1/5. And that is just a horrifying statistic.
Right.
And I place the blame for that, or the cause for that, basically at the foot of the schools, which breaks apart families.
Yes.
We've got researchers now that are urging us to take better part in our children's lives. Specifically, Erica Komisar talks about 0 to 3 and the importance of the mother bonding with the child, specifically the mother, but also the father. But that bonding with the child will set the child up later in life to have healthy relationships and not fear of abandonment issues and things like that. But also you've got Dr. Leonard Sachs, who is saying, skip the play date in lieu of a family date. Children need their families and they need their parents. And especially as teenagers, like he really doesn't want you to miss the fact that teens in particular need that relationship with their parents. So what is PragerU doing to kind of support that? Do you have materials for parents to encourage that kind of family bonding?
So I have this story that comes to my mind of this 4-year-old kid who could not read. And when he finally made it into school, he was so bored that he started learning how to read and write backwards. And he was the class clown. He couldn't fit in.
Wait, he started out, he couldn't read.
First, he couldn't even talk. At 4 years old, he could barely even talk. He could not read. Made it into school. Got so bored within the environment. Started reading, writing backwards. He was just a complete misfit.
Went above and
within the
beyond
school.
and just, yeah.
And eventually he ended up graduating 82 out of a class of 110, and which is really low, very
Right.
low. And his parents just couldn't deal with it anymore. So they ended up saying to him, you know what, take some money, do what you need to do, as long as you make it home by Friday night to read the Bible and to talk Bible with us over the weekend and keep the Sabbath. That person was Dennis Prager as a child. Okay.
Oh, you set me up.
He turned out to be an intellectual giant. He is not vape academically, to say the least. And so why do I tell you this story? Because people talk about character development as if it's something that is not as important or not something that we should focus on
It's an
as much as
afterthought.
academics.
Right.
Every time, including myself, when I need to portray what a failure our education system is, I will quote the abysmal rates of literacy in America, the abysmal rates of math, right? You have 28% of 8th graders barely passing the math academic test. But at the end of the day, what I want to say is that it's character development that leads to academics.
Right.
Better character development, better character that teaches merit, excellence, hard work, tenacity, perseverance, even goodness. Those are the things that will lead to better academics. And I bring this up is because so many conservatives have been saying, well, if you're sending your kid to a government school or even a private school, just have them focus on reading, writing, and arithmetic. Don't worry about character. And so what has the left been doing? They have hijacked character through SEL, social emotional learning. And if you are not a homeschooler and you're listening to this, I want to warn you against one of the largest Trojan horses in American schools, which is SEL. Because SEL supposedly teaches character development, but what kind of character does SEL actually teach? It teaches the character of the leftist, the victim mentality, the equity mentality, the critical race theory mentality, all of that. Meanwhile, those of us conservatives, we are still advocating for reading, writing, and arithmetic and nothing else, reading, writing, and arithmetic, and it cannot be done, Sam. You cannot teach literacy. How do you teach 5th, 6th, 7th grade literacy without having them read books about character? And so why are we winning now? We are finally starting to win now because we know what we stand for. We have enough courage to say this is what we believe. But for a very long time, we have forfeited the education of young Americans by saying all we're going to advocate for is nothingness. Reading, writing, and arithmetic, no character.
With no goal to it.
No goal,
And so
a
we were
vacuum.
we were just putting information down in front of children as if they were computers
Yes.
and trying to do data entry, and we got neither. And so where do we stand now? We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I'm going to ask Marissa her thoughts on shutting down the Department of Education and my 3 favorite questions, which will come up after the break. So stay tuned. This is the Sam Sorbo Show. We'll be right back. Hi there. So for years, I've been harping on the problems in our schools and the fact that most of our government schools, our factory schools, have been overrun by this progressive ideology that is really at war with our traditional American values, our Judeo-Christian values. And parents have finally started waking up more and more, which pleases me to no end. but they're worried about what to do. They're not sure which way to turn, and that's why it gives me great pleasure to announce my continuing partnership with the Herzog Foundation. So the Herzog Foundation is a trusted source for K through 12 Christian education. They have a really remarkable suite of resources for parents and for families. They have an online publication known as The Lion and a network of podcasts, including mine. So they can offer a wide range of advice and information for Christian parents to make the best decisions regarding the education of their children and the values that they instill in their children. And so if you want to find out any more about this remarkable organization, just go to herzogfoundation.com. That's herzogfoundation.com. Thanks so much.
Are you looking for quality homeschooling resources? Apologia offers top-notch curriculum for all ages. It's designed to inspire a love of learning and a strong foundation in faith. Head over to apologia.com and use code SORBO10 to get 10% off your next purchase. Equip your children with the best education tools and save today at Apologia, the trusted choice for homeschooling families.
And welcome back to the Sam Sorbo Show. My guest is Marissa Streit. She is the CEO of PragerU and PragerU Kids and all this great content that you've been putting out to promote traditional values, right? Traditional, and they are conservative values because traditional values are conservative by nature.
Yes.
And so we left off where you were talking about how we've abdicated the promotion of character.
Yes.
In lieu of this lie that we were sold that education is purely academic.
Correct.
And that school should just be data entry. And unfortunately, when you draw that to its final conclusion, which I think we've seen, it's failing test scores. It's that the United States is 40th in the nation. Is 40th in the world. Sorry, the 40th nation in the world for their metrics. And I don't think their metrics are any good.
Yes,
but they're the ones making the claim, I'll take it. Well, I don't know if you're aware of this, but like in the state of Ohio, if you score 36% on an exam, that's considered proficient, right? So they just redefine that, and we talked earlier about how they relabel the goals so that they can meet them because they couldn't meet the goals that were previously set out for them. So our schools are just completely, they're not educating, but I don't believe they're broken.
Well,
have you heard this before?
Well, okay, so they're doing what they're set to do. Right? And that is to basically make everybody compliant
and equally dumb
and equally compliant. Right? That's what they want. They want compliance because, and some would say, well, maybe during the Industrial Revolution, they just needed people who can be a cog in the system. Whether it's nefarious, which I believe it is, or just a terrible coincidence, if you had to come up with a system that's going to make Americans dumb, that's going to rob Americans of $268 billion a year. It's $268 billion a year.
It just boggles the mind.
Come up with results that are worse every single year. Be able to come up with goals, and when you don't meet the goals, in the name of equity, just change the goals. It's the only business in the world where you get to go and change the goals after you've shown that you couldn't beat the goals. You would think that some monster is sitting at the top of our country and is just trying to ruin us. You would think that somebody is just trying to ruin the United States of America by attacking our most precious asset,
and it's hard
our children.
because we went to school, so we learned that school was the right thing, and we were wrong if we criticized it. We were wrong if we didn't get along. We were the aberrant issue at stake, right? And so it's a very difficult mountain to climb to get back up on what's best for the family, what's best for the child, what's best for the individual, just that the individual knows that he or she has value. And value really to a family, I think, is the best way to go. So let's talk about the Department of Education. The plan is to shut it down, although they're sort of dragging their feet because they haven't confirmed the chosen Secretary of Education. I understand she did the interviews, but so far no actual result yet. And her mandate is to shut it down. Where do you fall on that?
So first of all, I don't think the Department of Education is going to be shut down overnight. I think it's going to be a process, and it has to be a process because it needs to be a long-lasting event. It can't be something that is shut down and then we don't think through how we make sure that the monster just comes back again, right? Sometimes when you create a huge vacuum, as I mentioned earlier, sometimes conservatives just go in, they get very passionate, and they create these vacuums, and we need to think about what's going to happen the morning after, what's going to happen the year after, and how do we make sure that it's everlasting. We also don't want people to go into a panic. There are many people who are thinking that they are reliant on the Department of Education. There's been a lot of misinformation about what the Department of Education does, and people are just going to assume that that means that there's going to be no more government school and no babysitters for their kids, and there's going to be a lot of fear mongering. And so I think it's going to take a while for whether it's Linda McMahon, if she gets confirmed, or anybody else to at least show. I don't know if they can win in the court of public opinion, but at the very least they need to show up. They need to be able to explain, what does this mean? What is the role of the state Department of Education, which is mostly what's responsible for what we are seeing on a daily basis in government schools? And what has been the role of the Department of Education, which has mostly been hiring 4,400 people to write checks out of our own pocket and not be accountable for it. And so the examples of the things that the Department of Education has been doing that I think the public should be aware of is the loan forgiveness programs. Are we okay with writing checks to universities that charge an insane amount of money for degrees that our society simply doesn't value, right? Do we really need more people studying anthropology or theater? Well, you may have been a theater.
French Renaissance basket
French
weaving.
ballet. I'm sure like balloon blowing. I mean, you will not like gender theory, transgender theory, double gender theory, like all of these things. There is no limit to the amount of money that Americans have been spending on loan forgiveness for simply degrees where we have no jobs for. And we're seeing this. You see all these 20-year-olds that have graduated from colleges and they can't get a job because
they can't. They don't even know how to be
nobody
an
wants
adult.
to hire these people.
Right, because they haven't been trained to be an adult because
Correct.
they went to school and they were infantilized.
And they've been told that they're victims, etc. Right? And so if you privatize the market of loans, then you will have companies who will actually assess whether it's worth it for them to give money for degrees that the student would be able to pay back.
Wow,
right?
now you're talking a big upset, right?
Because it's a big, well, why do they hate me and maybe you and for sure Linda McMahon so much? Why did this industry hate us so much? Well, they have a lot to lose, Sam. They have $268 billion to lose. That's why they're putting on a big fight, because up until now, even Ronald Reagan tried to shut down the Department of Education. And it's not that easy because they have so much to lose that they will put everything they have. And who's willing to take that? Who is willing to take that kind of attack?
Take that on,
right? And so anybody who is willing to take that on is not just brave and courageous. They might be even a little crazy. It's really so much to expect. But I think that as the public needs to want to take it on. The public needs to say, I am done paying so much money for something that not only is our society not receiving benefit for, but we're actually being hurt by it.
Yeah, we're actually being hurt. And I think that goes back to the mental health crisis. I mean, you can put some of it at the foot of social media, but the kids wouldn't be turning to social media if they had other outlets, right?
Some of it is social media, but a big part of it is if you go to government schools and your teacher who is not equipped to talk about mental illness, and some of these teachers themselves are dealing with their own issues, they're sitting there with 20-something, sometimes even 40 students, and conversing about victim mentality and mental illness, and the child is being asked in front of the rest of the class, do you think you're a boy? Do you think you're a girl? I mean, do you think that that is not going to have a traumatizing impact on a child when they have to talk about their personal life and their personal emotions with somebody who's not even properly, I don't know what one should be properly trained to do.
How you get trained for that, but still, they're a novice in any case.
And a big part of the conversation, Sam, is do you even trust your parents? Maybe you shouldn't tell your parents.
So I just saw there's a school that promotes this and sends out to the children in 6th grade a questionnaire with multiple choice. Are you transgender? Do you consider yourself non-binary? Are you and the choices are ridiculous. They're absurd, all of them. But it's all of these choices, and then there's also the option, I don't know what this question is asking, and also I don't know the answer to the question. Like, and you go, what is it their business?
Yeah.
Whose business is it of them to ask these questions of 6th graders? And of course, the only business is to get them thinking about sex.
Yes.
Because that's grooming.
It's part of the grooming, and
Yeah.
people would say that we're so extreme that we're using these words, but it is. I mean,
No, it is.
to ask a child in front of the rest of the class whether they have suicidal thoughts, can
That's
you imagine what they're planting
so
into
dangerous.
these children's minds? So, I think that as parents are waking up, they're realizing that something has to change, and they're also realizing that something has been funding this. And what's been funding a lot of this has been this political entity that has been really, the Department of Education is a political entity.
There is a lot of support for shutting down the Department of Education, and I think that there's an opportunity to educate people to understand that every state has its own Department of Education. We don't really need redundancy at the federal level, and of course you bring up the student loans, which is a big problem, right?
Yeah.
All right, so your point of view is we want to shut it down, but it's going to take some time because it has to be done properly.
It has to be done
And this
properly,
is-
and there's the money involved. I think that some people are going to be so concerned about, well, what happens if you're low income and you receive federal funds, or what happens if you're a special needs family? And my answer to that is you will be given that money through the Treasury so you can find the learning opportunity that is best for your child. We worked with a young man a few years ago who was blind, and he could not find a proper government school for him in California because some of the government schools can't really accommodate a child who is blind. And there were private schools for blind children, but the parents could not afford it. And if they could have used a voucher, which is basically what the government is providing these government schools, instead of going to the government school, it would go to the family. The family could take the child who is blind to a great school at what is now $17,000 a year per child in America. That's what we're spending on
Right.
every kid. You take that money and you find this amazing school. Why would you not want that? If the government is telling you they're going to send you the check directly instead of some bureaucrat who does not care about you, why would you fight against that?
Right, if they're sending the money.
If you get the money, right. If you get the money.
Which in the state of Florida, it's $16,000 a year and you get 8. I don't know where the other 8
Well,
ends up.
$8,000 is still better than the zero that you're going to get if you
Right.
send your kid to a government school.
Right, and you get, and then you get to direct.
Yeah,
some
the
of it.
$17,000 computation is because of the amount of money that we're spending for the bureaucrats to sit there and write their checks. That's
It is
where
really,
the money is
I
going.
mean, I think we're going to uncover more and more, and the American people are going to be terribly surprised. I was just talking to somebody, and he thinks it might be as much as 50% grift. And I'm going, really? Because when you look at Zelensky, who said, I only got 75 billion, it was 200, but I only got 75. That's more than 50% grift.
Yeah.
And the problem is we have now a society that, because they're trained in school to think of money as the highest value, if you don't do the grift, you're the dumb one.
Yeah.
Everybody's in on the grift because everybody thinks everyone else is doing it.
That's what happens when this is classic Marxism and communism. That's what happens. It actually makes people selfish.
Yeah. And they're suspicious of everyone else.
You want to hear a crazy story? In China, I have a friend that lives part of the year in China. And he describes to me that when he drives in China, you'll see people laying on the road where you're actually driving. And nobody stops. Everybody just drives around the person who's laying there on the road with the cars. And that sounds pretty terrible. How could you not stop when you see a person laying on the road? Well, the thing is that if you do stop and you walk out of the car to check on the person starts blaming you that you hit them.
Right.
You see what happens?
Yes,
There's
it's like
no
a
God
whole
in China.
setup, yeah.
There's no God in China.
Yeah.
There's no morality.
Well, there's no God
character.
in the public schools either.
And it's the same system, Sam. It's
Yeah.
the same system.
Yeah.
There is no morality, and it causes people to be selfish. And it does it breeds a worse society. And so people don't understand why we have no discernment, why people are selfish, why are they miserable. It's all part of the same thing. It's a matrix. We're raising our kids in this matrix where they have been conditioned to believe that they need these bogus degrees and that we need these experts with their bogus degrees to teach our children to go get bogus degrees and essentially become corporate slaves so that they can participate in the entire matrix. And the moment you are able to pull yourself out, you can't unsee.
Right.
The moment
It's like
you see, you can't
go
unsee.
moving into Technicolor from black and white.
It's unbelievable.
I watched a man who's a multi-platinum Grammy award-winning musician say proudly that his son was studying music production at a university. And I'm looking at him going, you're the pinnacle. You so hit the jackpot. Like
nothing
you're
to
the
teach
guy.
them.
But you're sending your son and paying for it.
Yeah.
For someone else to teach him? Like there's just a dissonance that happens, right? Like,
yeah. Well, I
can't
take
see
this
it.
to another level because part of living in this matrix is this concept that you should ship your kids away to a bunch of strangers to teach them, where the most American thing actually used to be apprenticeship.
That's right.
One of my favorite companies is In-N-Out. When I've actually become friends with the CEO, Lindsay Snyder, and I think it's just so fantastic because she is building her family's company, and she's learned everything from her grandparents and her parents. And people are just so mean. They're so vile. They'll just, oh, well, Lindsay, she inherited this business, and it means nothing. I think it means everything. I think it means everything when you can build something and you can share it with your children, and your children love you and respect you enough to stay within the company and build that legacy. Can we just bring that back as opposed to shipping them off to some Harvard University where they learn how to become dumber?
Sounds like you're talking about the president. The current one. Demonstrably not the most recent.
Yes.
Previous
Yes.
one. Okay, we need to talk about Trailblazers and Read Across America.
Yeah.
So tell me about Read Across America and PragerU's answer to Read Across America.
Okay, I don't know about Read Across America. Half of these bogus projects conservatives end up leaning into, thinking that they're doing something good, but we're supporting another Trojan horse. So I just want to be careful of that because there are some programs out there that are great and we should join in on, but always with eyes wide open, right? And so I think reading across America is very important. I think we should be reading all the time across America.
Right.
So, but
the Read Across America is the NEA, the National Educators Association, promoting reading to children.
yes.
The theme of it is diversity and inclusivity, and the main picture on their website is a little girl reading a book titled Pride.
Right.
So where that's heading is something else, right?
Right. Well,
You
yeah.
guys do something
well,
different.
I think this is the typical thing that the left will do. They'll prey on our good intentions and our fears, and they'll manipulate us into joining what they think good character development is. But at the end of the day, we do want our children to read. And I think it's very hard for many parents to pre-read everything before they hand it to their
right.
child. It is virtually impossible and unfair to expect any of us to really do all the time. And secondly, I think that we do want to have our children read as much as possible. And while we get rid of some stuff like Scholastic and some of the stuff that Read Across America promotes, we can't create a vacuum. So my answer to that is it's not enough to just say reading, writing, and arithmetic, no more woke stuff, but we need to provide an alternative for the parents. And as much as I would love the kids to only read the classics, I'm all about classical education, I'm also realistic. I have a 6th grader too, and he doesn't always want to read C.S. Lewis. Sometimes he will, but sometimes he wants something modern that he can relate to, that has stories from today. That he can relate to, or that is designed as if it's been designed today. And so what we've decided to do here at PragerU is to provide an alternative. And there are other companies that do this as well. But if you're nervous about providing your kids with books that could be woke, you know that we will never publish anything woke here at PragerU. And so rather than, this is a book that you'll probably find at Read Across America because it's Scholastic, and this is the sequel to their original book was Melissa, about a boy who was born George, a boy, and decided to become Melissa, and this is 4th grade literacy. And so then they came out with Rick, which is because Melissa was so successful because they shoved it into everybody's throats. They came out with Rick, and it's another one of those. And so much of what you'll find and read across America is so bad that you don't even need to pre-read it, but we are trying to provide alternatives. So we came up with how dare we, white, celebrate some white people, right? It has nothing to do with anybody's color of their skin, but really their accomplishment. So the Trailblazers are just great, clean, wholesome, fun, adventurous content that teach a little bit of American history in a really fun way.
But I also want to point out that there's a difference between making up an individual who decides to bravely, courageously change his gender, whatever that is, and somebody who actually changed the course of history
Yes.
for this nation, who exhibited virtues like courage and fortitude and strength of character and things like that, and sharing that with your kids in a modern format, right? So there are pictures in there, and there's lovely drawings and interesting things to read, and it's a great supplement for the classics, which I love.
Yeah. I mean, I do think that kids should try to read the original sources, but we also recognize that sometimes they'll want something that is digestible to them at an appropriate age level. And so there's activities in here, and it's fun, and it teaches, of course it teaches character. Of course it does. It's a literacy piece. It's a history piece. It teaches character. It teaches tenacity and perseverance. And frankly, Sam, I think it teaches national pride, which is going to help our the mental issues that we have in America. You cannot be raised in a country being told that you're raised in a horrible place and not come up with some mental issues from that, right? How dare we teach our children that this country that they're born into is not fantastic, right? How dare we do that?
Especially because it is the beacon of the world.
Everybody wants to come here.
Exactly.
So
we have a problem with illegal immigration because people want to come
they
here.
want to come here. And it's thanks to people like this, our trailblazers.
Davy Crockett,
and the many others that we had. This is a 7-part series.
Daniel Boone.
These
American heroes, real life heroes.
And it's okay. It doesn't matter what the color of their skin is. It doesn't matter. What matters is what they've done for our country and the type of role models. Were they perfect? Of course they were not perfect. But that's another thing we shouldn't teach our kids. Nobody should be taught that they need to be perfect all the time.
No, in fact, it's good because these people did have flaws, and you point out just a little bit to show them these are real people.
Yeah. So it's a great series. It's clean, and nobody needs to worry about any woke mind virus penetrating into their child's mind.
And people can just go get that online.
Yeah, it's available on PragerU.com. We are so lucky because of our donors. We're able to keep things super inexpensive. So really, you're only paying for the shipment and the
and incidentally,
printing.
Always looking for donors at PragerU because that's how they
great.
keep doing this great stuff.
Yep.
So your personal education, we know you were educated as an educator. You also have a master's in business. You're using what you learned for and against what you're doing now, let's say, right? So those are my first 2 questions, and we've sort of covered that. But my last question is, what advice would you give a younger version of yourself? And you can go back to any age, but what is like a piece of advice that you would have told yourself?
Oh my gosh, so easy.
Oh, good.
Yes, prioritize family over everything. It is having children is the greatest gift. I just get goosebumps every time I talk about this because so many women have been taught that they should delay having children, that they shouldn't get married until they have a stable career, now you even have the toxic mom culture where women are told that having children is a nightmare. Sam, I run a company with 180 employees. Our budget is $70 million. I dance with the president. I get to work with Dennis Prager. Nothing is as important to me and nothing is as meaningful to me as having my children. It is the most fulfilling thing on God's green earth. And so the fact that we as women have the opportunity to raise children, and men too, what a great thing it is to be a father. My greatest piece of advice is do not delay having a family. And if you want both, you'll have both. You can have both. But you do it in the right order and the right priority, and that is to prioritize family.
And I know women who have stepped away from their careers to raise their kids, and inevitably their career is what's the word? It's not rejuvenated, but informed
Yeah.
and perfected through their children, through their experience with their children. So I love that you said that. And we do need to get back to family in this nation. So
Yeah.
thank you so much. Marissa Streit
My pleasure.
from PragerU. And that's it for us. This is the Sam Sorbo Show. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, speak truth, speak it boldly. We'll see you next time.
The views and opinions expressed in the Sam Sorbo Show are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views and positions of the Herzog Foundation.